Welcome back to the second installment of Seneca to Shakespeare, with special reference to Shakespeare's Hamlet as a revenge tragedy. By the end of the first installment, I made a curtain note that in Shakespeare's Hamlet, the physical violence is only minimum. The three instances of physical violence, Hamlet killing Polonius, and the brief scuffle between Hamlet and Laertes in the gravedigger scene, and the final duel between Hamlet and Laertes. These three incidents were lost on stage in action just a few minutes. So the physical violence on stage is only minimum in Shakespeare's Hamlet. What really makes Shakespeare's Hamlet a Senecan revenge tragedy is the philosophical crisis, the psychological and emotional violence hitherto unspoken anywhere in the history of English literature. That is more important, that deserves our focus. So, generally speaking, what are the salient features of English revenge tragedy? That is the first question with which we can start understanding, because we started analyzing the play as a revenge tragedy with an introduction to Seneca. You see, with an introduction to Seneca, we started this discussion. So then we moved on to what is Senecan revenge tragedy, and then how the Senecan revenge tragedy is important in the context of English revenge tragedy. You see, that is what we have to focus upon. So now we are moving on to the salient features of English revenge tragedy. You see, that is going to be our focus here. And what are the salient features of English revenge tragedy? For example, murder of the innocent and the subsequent quest for revenge by the near and dear one of the victim. You see, and then you have the ghost of the murdered haunting the dramatic world. In fact, Shakespeare's Hamlet begins with the ghost of elder Hamlet haunting the battlement of Castle Elsinore. In that scene, Shakespeare establishes a very new technique. We have to move backward in time to understand what Shakespeare wants to establish by that scene. You see, Shakespeare first creates a world in which communication has gone astray. You see, the play begins with the two minor characters, Francisco and Bernardo. These characters who are at the vigil, these two characters establish by their conversation the complete breaking down of communication. This is really biblical. When human beings disobeyed God's commands, when they try to take the world, the values, and the cosmic universe into their own hands as a moral decadence, which has been talked about in all religious canonical thoughts all over the world. In Bible, we find the gods disintegrating the communicative system, that the individuals do not understand one another. So the lapse of communication, the loss of communication results in chaos, where everything is topsy-turvy. Human society can be built only on communication. When communication breaks down, when communication fails, when the system fails, things fall apart and the center cannot hold. Like that, there is an air of apprehension, angst in the castle Elsinore that foreshadows the major theme, the decadence of moral values prevailing in Denmark according to the plague that time. So the ghost comes there to reveal the mystery shrouded around its death. And what will happen in an English revenge tragedy later? Later, there will be a chain of plots and counter plots. For example, both the protagonist and the antagonist will be laying plots, contriving plots to trap one another, each other. In fact, in Hamlet, espionage is a recurring motive. What is espionage? Spying. You see, spying, espionage is not limited, confined only to the art of politicking. In politics, in the art of governance, it is moral to have spies, feelers. That is accepted all over the world. A kingdom without good spies, like a kingdom without good counselors, it is bound to fail. So, in the art of politicking, espionage is moral. But what happens in Hamlet is everybody spies upon another person. Not even such sterling characters, such innocent characters like Ophelia is spared of this job of spying, whether knowingly or inadvertently, as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern spy upon the Prince Hamlet, their schoolfellow, their friend to whom they are actually loyal. They think that they are helping. Polonius for political mileage, Claudius for villainy, Gertrude for self-defense, Hamlet to find out the truth. Everybody spies. So espionage is a very important theme in Hamlet. At one point, a minor character in Hamlet tells us there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. There is something rotten in the state of Denmark. The prince also says in a later scene, you see, the time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that I was ever made to set it right. Why can't I lead a life of an ordinary young man? Why should I be weighed down to act as the scourge stick? The scourge stick. The scourge stick is the punishing cane. The cane with which elders punish the offenders. So, why should I be the scourge stick of gods? The time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that I was ever made to set it right. Not only the protagonist, the minor character, very minor character, a soldier, in the opening scene says there is something rotten in the state of Denmark. What is rotten? How a world, a society, which has a Wittenberg scholar for the prince, should rot. Two things. Communication fails. Number two, there is mistrust. Nobody believes another person completely. The belief The trust between Hamlet and Horatio, as I talked about in the first installment, is an exception for the nobility of soul, for the nobility of self, the nobility of true friendship. Confidant, we call him. That is why the moral idealist dies on the lap of Horatio, telling him, calling him very fondly in my production. You see, the boy who, the actor who did the role of Hamlet would so fondly call Horatio, Horatio, you see, before saying the rest is silence, Horatio, he very fondly called, because in Horatio lives humanity. In Horatio lives the ray of faith for humanity to recuperate from this malady and continue, resume the nobility of human existence as God's creation, which you find breaking down in the beginning of the play. When does mistress enter? Mistress enters with treachery, with betrayal. How can one betray the one who trusts him or her? Only when there is moral decadence, only when the value system fails. We are not talking about value as an abstraction. Value means the parental love, the child's love, the brother's love, friendship, honor, you see, truth, loyalty, gratitude. When these things, the basic values, fail, you see, that is why we talked about the spirit, you see, the spirit, the good spirit, eudaimonia in the first installment. The good spirit can bring happiness to the individual and can sustain welfare in a society. And this good spirit demonstrates what we call arete, virtue. This virtue, being virtuous, is the excellence of human individual. Excellence, that is the excellence. Not the material wealth, not the power and glory. The virtue remaining morally fortified, emotionally integrated. You see, this fortification of self, the nobility of self, the practical ethical wisdom, the cardinal virtues, sustainable cardinal virtues, not just creating an ideology for our convenience. There are certain cardinal virtues, as I told you, prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance. You see, these things, when these things fail, as Hamlet asked, to be or not to be, that is the question. Exactly in Act 3 he asked, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to bear the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. The fortune may be outrageous, but if there is nobility of self, you will withstand that, thinking that this is temporary, this is momentary lapse of reason and faith and prudence. This will go and humanity will prevail. If we have that faith, then we are ideal Senecan men. That is very important. You see, the nobility of self. So Hamlet, when he talks about his father, he says, what a piece of work is man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties. You see, the Renaissance humanism focuses upon man as God's supreme creation. There are certain cases and accusations about Renaissance humanism which focused on anthropocentrism as opposed to the ecocentrism. Right. Now, what we mean by anthropo, the nobility of the self, is not being self-centered, not being egotistic, but living with self-respect, faith in one's self, and prudently practicing that wisdom. That is what we mean by the nobility of self. You see, when these things break down, good ones as well as the bad ones contrive plots, and what happens? Everything loses its beauty. Ophelia becomes mad because Ophelia is, what shall we say, a misfit to survive in this world of espionage. Even humor becomes morbid, you see, and there is madness everywhere. See, antique disposition. Shakespeare calls it antique disposition. There is a madness in all of us. This madness is governed and amplified by our reason, sense of reason. When the sense of reason disappears, dissolves, then madness comes out. It has been an eternal discussion whether Hamlet feigned madness or he really was mad. There are many questions. We are not going into that now. Whether he feigned madness or it was an outburst of madness. Both possibilities are there because the way in which Shakespeare uses Hamlet to talk to Ophelia in Act 3 is not Hamlet-like, not the words of a moral idealist. He tells Ophelia, get thee to a nunnery. Don't marry. Get thee to a nunnery. And if you marry, marry a fool, so that she will not find out the treasons, your betrayal, your infidelity. You see, it is so horrendous, like the line spoken by Ferdinand in the Duchess of Malfi, where he asks his sister, do not have any birds in your household. If you want to have birds, don't have parrot, because parrot will tell the name of your adulterous husband. You see, like that. Here Hamlet, there Ferdinand is a mad wolf, the one who is really affected by lycanthropia. The poor patient who is affected by lycanthropia believes that he has transformed into a wolf and would behave like a wolf, like a mad dog. Here Hamlet says Shylock was created after the character of Lopez, the one who lived, the one who was very close to the queen, the doctor, the physician to the queen, the Jew physician. Later on, he was accused of having attempted to poison the queen, and he was executed in public. Lopez means wolf. So Shakespeare uses the Elizabethan, detest, Elizabethan hatred, anti-Semitism for the Jews, which was thick in the air, by associating that memory, the historical memory, with Shylock. So Shylock calls himself as a cur. See, you are, Signor Antonio, the other day, you spurned me as a stranger cur, like a stray dog. You see, and the revenge which Shylock tries to take in the climax makes him bloodthirsty, projects him as a person who wants to taste the blood of his enemy. And Antonio becomes the lamb. That is different. Here it is Hamlet, the moral idealist. But this moral idealist, you see, drives away Ophelia, such an innocent person. There are so many possibilities in the interpretation. Hamlet may have deliberately driven away Ophelia so that she can live peacefully, because his life is not going to be peaceful and he cannot give a peaceful life to Ophelia, whom he loves, because the end of to be or not to be, the soliloquy, the most famous soliloquy in Hamlet, ends with Ophelia, fair nymph. Nymph means angel. Ophelia, fair nymph. You see, remember me in thy prayers, in thy orisons, in thy prayers, which means Hamlet pretends to be mad at Ophelia. I mean, not right. You see, that is indication. We have to do textual criticism here. Read the text closely, close reading, reading between lines, not reading the text in isolation, connecting one line with another. One line may have appeared in the beginning. Hamlet knows in the beginning, the moment he comes to know that his father was murdered, he is waiting for witness. He is waiting for tangible proof, because he is a prince who advocates morality, a moral idealist. A moral idealist should not justify his violent action mindlessly, ruthlessly, emotionally. He should execute it as a king would, as a prince would, in order to eradicate vice from his world, to sustain nobility in his space, to sustain virtue in his space. That is the responsibility of the moral idealist when he is in power, especially. That is the responsibility of judicious king, whom Shakespeare praises in Henry V, the mirror of all Christian kings. So Hamlet wants to be one such governor. He may not be the ruler of Denmark, but still he is the son of the king, the prince of Denmark. It is his responsibility to sustain order and value in this world. So Hamlet, unlike Laertes, Laertes is a foil to Hamlet. Laertes, who has gone to France, the news reaches him that his father died in mysterious circumstances and he was not given proper Christian burial, resultant of which his sister Ophelia has gone mad. Laertes rushes back to Denmark. The moment he comes to Denmark, he is not shown as in France on stage. The stage remains in Denmark. It doesn't follow anyone when a character leaves. Even if Hamlet leaves to England, the play remains in Denmark. Shakespeare creates a kind of, what shall I say, a frame-like quality to focus upon Denmark. So Hamlet goes and returns. Laertes has gone even before Hamlet goes, and Laertes returns in the climax. When Laertes lands in Denmark, he does not ask any question, any proof, just he gathers all his relatives, takes up his arms, and goes to the king's castle and bangs on the door. King, come out. I want to kill you. He doesn't stay, linger to verify the news or how it happened, who must be punished. Whereas Hamlet, right from the beginning, has been waiting for indisputable truth, tangible evidence. But these characters, the antagonists in the world of espionage, these people are running around. They are not trapped by they are not controlled by their conscience. That is why finally Hamlet decides, play is the thing wherein I can catch the conscience of the king. That's what he tells Ophelia and Gertrude when the play is about to play within the play. Play within the play is also a very important motive in revenge tragedies, in Senecan revenge tragedies, in English revenge tragedies as well. Shakespeare made optimum use of it, not confining it to tragedy, but taking it even to comedy. Because play is the thing where the characters are given the privileged position to remain an audience, and the audience are twice removed from the question, and now they can remain in the Brechtian way. Bertolt Brecht, for his whole life, wondered how to give a privileged position to the audience where they will not be emotionally involved in the dramatic action. They can remain in the privileged position of judges and come out with a noble discussion, a reasonable discussion to find out a solution to the problem dramatized. This was Brecht's obsession almost. That is why Bertolt Brecht, the German dramatist, refuses to call his plays tragedies, Aristotelian tragedies. He rather used the expression epic theater for his tragic dramas like Mother Courage and Her Children. Remember that. Why? Because in tragedy, there is too much of emotion involvement that the audience find only the catharsis, an outlet for the emotion, and they leave the theater freed of their emotion. Purgatorial process, purged of their strong emotions. Bertolt Brecht did not want his people to leave, his audience to leave the theater relieved. He wanted his audience to leave the theater agitated, forever thinking how to solve this problem till they find out a solution to that. You see, in that way, what does Shakespeare do? Shakespeare, in many of his plays, uses play within the play to give a privileged position to the audience who will be removed from the issue twice. Because some of the actors would occupy the position of directly watching the play within the play, as in Hamlet. In Hamlet, king, queen, and the courtiers, prince, and others, they're all there. Hamlet plants himself at one end, and he asks Horatio to go to the other end. From two angles, Claudius ought to be observed that when the play within the play enacts, original title is Murder of Gonzago, original title, in which the same thing happens. The brother kills the king and marries the queen, poisons, you see. So Hamlet asks the players to enact that drama in the court. Now, reading the reaction of Claudius, Hamlet can come to a conclusion. Shakespeare takes not only Hamlet's character, but also the very genre drama to a noble level. A time in which Puritans were so much against theatres. Theatres were accused of impacting corrupt influences. The Puritans were very much dissatisfied, displeased, agitated by the popularity and fame of theatre, the patronage enjoyed by theatre, both from the rulers and from the subjects. The Puritans were very much disturbed. Shakespeare now tells the Puritans that drama is a noble exercise. What life cannot do, drama can do. The real life is not able to inculcate or sustain noble human values in people like Claudius, or even in his mother Gertrude. You see, Gertrude is able to live with Claudius happily after the death of her husband, the elder Hamlet. These values, Polonius, you see, spies upon others, friends betray, you see, kind of things. So in this world of deterioration, decadence of moral values, literature, drama alone can sustain and retain and sustain human values. That is why Hamlet says, play is the thing wherein I can catch the conscience of the king. And Hamlet, when Gertrude and Ophelia ask him, what's the title of the play? Hamlet says, Mousetrap. Hamlet says what? Mousetrap. Like a mouse. The conscience of the king is running helter-skelter. We are not able to catch his conscience. You see? So the play will do that. Hamlet believes. The play is performed. And Claudius is unable to watch the play in its entirety. Claudius cries out, help, help, light, oh, light, not help, light, light. You see? And he leaves the place like a wounded animal. Now Hamlet is confirmed that Claudius is the offender. So they go to the climax. Now, till the end, Hamlet has been procrastination. The procrastination, maybe Sigmund Freud and other psychoanalytical critics, you see, may interpret that with an Oedipal angle, from an Oedipal angle. That is not our concern here now. We are talking about Hamlet as a Shakespearean revenge tragedy. That may be for some other discussion. Here, Hamlet waits. It is clearly told in the play that Hamlet waits because he is a prince. He wants to establish order, even in a world where the order has been perverted. He must be the one who is expected to restore the order. Order, perversion of order, restoration of order. You see, these are the three groups of characters you find in Shakespearean tragedies. You see, in all his tragedies. So it is the responsibility of the Prince of Denmark, Hamlet, to restore the order. So the means are as important as the end. The nobility of self, prudence, practical wisdom, not giving up your ethical values. In a Hollywood film, Omar Mukhtar, you see, when the liberation fighters ambush the enemy tanks, one young soldier climbs up the tank and snatches the Italian flag and tries to burn it. He is stopped by the leader, Omar Mukhtar. No, don't do it. Then the young man asks back, what do they do to our flags? Then the elder person, the leader, Omar Mukhtar, says, they are our enemies, not our teachers. They are our enemies, not our teachers. We should not follow what they do. We are actually against them, not the individuals, their values, their corruption, their greed. That is what we are against, their aggression. We should not do what they do. So Hamlet doesn't rush madly towards violence. He wants to execute it as a punishment for the offender, to restore order, because he is in such a position. He must be a judicious person, a mirror of all Christian kings, whereas Laertes, his foil. Remember, both these people have the same problem. They want to take revenge for the death of their fathers. But Laertes rushes. So this mad rush makes Laertes susceptible, a prey to the villainy of the king Claudius. Claudius tells him he pretends to be a very noble person. If my death can give you solace, Laertes, I am ready to die. But remember, I am not the reason for your father's death. True, but how he manipulates Machiavellian. You see, Machiavellian villain. Smiles and yet be a villain. So what does he do? Claudius twists turns Laertes against Hamlet, and he wants to make sure that Hamlet is killed there in the duel. So when he prods Laertes to challenge Hamlet for a duel, he also tells Laertes that she would give an unbuttoned sword. You see, in the fence duels, in matches where they decide who the winner is, you see, the edge of the sword would be buttoned so that you give a hit, you don't really hurt the other person. But Laertes' sword is unbuttoned. Not only that, the point is envenomed also. Poison is smeared in the point. So you need not really thrust. A scratch would do. It will be mortally wounding the person. That is how when Hamlet comes to know that the end is poison, the poison envenomed too, he would say, a famous line. The point envenomed too. You have not only unbuttoned the sword, you have poisoned the point of the sword also. The point envenomed too, he would say. Like saying, my God, how far you will go in your treachery, in your villainy. And Hamlet doesn't know till then that Claudius has gone to a villainy unsurpassable level. What is it? He has poisoned the cup of drink, which has been reserved for Hamlet if he asks for it, which the queen takes and drinks it, not knowing the drink is also poisoned. See, making it sure that the other person will not survive in any way, not giving any chance of survival to the other person. That is what Claudius's villainy is. So, in the climax, what happens? Hamlet is scratched. Then Hamlet understands that the point is unbuttoned. So, in the next clash, the swords change. Hamlet grapples Laertes' sword and gives him a hit. The hit is so sharp that Laertes falls down immediately. And then something happens in the moment of death to Laertes, because Laertes basically is a nice person. The approaching death may have dawned some sense in Laertes that he tells, Prince, the point is envenomed. You are also going to die. Then Hamlet says, point envenomed too. At that moment, he turns around. His mother is falling down because she has taken the drink and drank it. She falls down. That is the end. Hamlet jumps to leap or not to leap. Laurence Olivier, when he does the role of Hamlet in the film version of it, he gives a colossal leap, like a dart. He leaps on Claudius and stabs him, you see, with a poisoned sword. What happens? Everyone dies. See, now there is no ruler. The ruler, young Fortinbras from Norway, whose father was defeated by elder Hamlet in a single combat, and the land was taken by elder Hamlet in a judicial way. In a single combat, he defeated Norway. Single combat, he defeated Norway. But young Norway, Fortinbras, who is referred to in the beginning of the play, he is not satisfied. He has been mustering army to take back the land. This is another way of avenging the death. So foils are there in the play for Hamlet. Hamlet emerges as the noblest of them all. Fortinbras finally enters with a warlike march onto the stage. And when he sees the ruin around, as in John Webster's Duchess of Malfi, in the climax, ancient ruins, as in Akira Kurosawa's adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth, titled as Throne of Blood, which begins with the song amidst the ruins. You see, these are the ruins from which we have to learn our lesson. History has such ruins. So it is not an individual's tragedy. It is the tragedy of a civilization from which we have to prevail. We have to come out of this tragedy and continue our life in a noble way. After Hamlet has lived, demonstrated this. So Hamlet tells Horatio, you see, the world outside, let it not talk that the prince had gone mad and resulted in this corpse-strewn stage. In a revenge tragedy, you see, in the climax, in the catastrophe, in the destruction, the entire stage would be scattered with dead bodies. And removing the corpses from out of the stage is a closing ritual in revenge tragedies. Remember it. Closing ritual in revenge tragedies. So here Hamlet is dead, Polonius is already dead, Ophelia has drowned herself. You see, since she has gone mad, she comes. In Act 5, she comes, gathering flowers, knitting garland, and distributing flowers to all, each flower representing, since Shakespeare is an eco-poet, eco-dramatist, every flower, every object of nature and vegetation, flora and fauna, has something to tell humanity. It's like a writing on the wall. Only human beings are unable to read. If you have the prudence, if you have the ethical, practical wisdom, then life will teach you. There are instances in life. Truth is everywhere. You see, truth is. Truth doesn't happen. Truth is. It is there. It is only we have to read it. Unfortunately, some individuals have a defense mechanism, ironically, against perceiving the truth. They keep their conscience suppressed. They close their eyes to the reality, the supreme reality, which causes such calamity, such catastrophe. Ophelia, making garlands, plucking the flowers. Gertrude tells Laertes, when Laertes returns from Denmark, she climbs the branch of a tree. And the tree, the branch of the tree, which has grown envious of the slim waist of Ophelia, breaks down, and Ophelia falls into the deep running stream. Since she's wearing a full body gown, the air puffs inside and she's floating. This poor Ophelia, like a child, doesn't even know that she has fallen into water. So, still singing and knitting the garland, she disappears from life and from our eyes, from the description of Ophelia. So, Ophelia is already dead. Polonius is dead even before his daughter would. Gertrude dies. Elder Hamlet has been murdered in the beginning, even before the play would begin. The villain is killed. The poor people, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who are caught in the crossfire, they also die premature death. That is why Tom Stoppard wrote a play, modern British dramatist Tom Stoppard wrote a play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. In that play, he asks why Rosencrantz and Guildenstern should die. You see, why should they die? What crime did they commit? So finally, you find almost all characters dead. The only witness for all this, because young Fortinbras, who is going to rule Denmark after the death of Prince, doesn't know what happened. So he asked Horatio, Horatio, let us bury them. Then you tell us what happened, you see, to this noble Hamlet. So Hamlet, while dying, tells Horatio, the world outside should not think that this mad prince caused this catastrophe. So tell them what happened, so that nobility in this world, order in this world will be restored. That is my only idea. Hamlet does not use that expression, that was my only intention, or that is my only dream. He doesn't say that, but instead of which he speaks the immortal line, rest is silence. Rest is silence. I have nothing else to do. I have nothing else to say. I'll die happily if you go and tell the world outside what happened and what is the lesson we have to learn from this, how their prince suffered, how their prince struggled to restore order. If you tell that, people will reform themselves and they will avoid such moral decadence in future. Rest is silence. Hamlet says, rest is silence. Hamlet is not just Shakespeare's most enigmatic play. Hamlet is more than that, Shakespeare's most philosophical play, which has created the noblest of all human beings, Hamlet. Noblest. There is no other word for other than that. You see, there is no word other than the noblest. So Hamlet, when he dies, he actually represents, completely, totally represents the philosophical concept of tragedy. Tragedy, tragos, oides. Tragos means goat. Oides means song, goat song. What is this song? This song, like Satyajit Ray's Pate Panchali, the song of road. You see, this play talks about the song of the goat, which offered himself as a sacrifice at the altar of God to cleanse this world of its guilt and sin. Hamlet is certainly Shakespeare's the best play. There are so many things. Shakespeare himself had a son named Hamlet who died a premature death. Here and there we read, don't know much about Shakespeare, here and there we read anecdotes and some gossips. Anecdote is a humorous event, but small snippets of information recorded in other diaries. I don't say they are dependable, but one such diary says that after the death of his son, Shakespeare was so hurt. You see, he had two other daughters, Judith and Susanna. You see, he was so hurt, he was so suffering, sad, grief-stricken, that in the night he wouldn't be able to sleep. He would pace up and down, thinking that, hallucinating that his son was calling him. Perhaps that is the reason why Shakespeare has given that line, which disturbs us very much. In the beginning, when Elder Hamlet, the ghost of Elder Hamlet, asked the prince, its son, to say, remember me, don't forget me. Hamlet is shocked. Remember me? How can a son forget his father? Why should the ghost of my father ask me, beg me, plead me to remember him? How can I forget my father? How can a son forget his father? But the ghost knows the moral decadence in which the wife has forgotten her husband. The brother has forgotten his brother. The world may forget. This is the world. Unfaithful world. Oh, that this true solid flesh would melt. That is the opening line I told you. The world has become an unweeded garden. So, this noblest character, scapegoat, tragedy as scapegoat, the song of the scapegoat, the noblest of the characters, offers itself at the altar of God to cleanse this world of its sin and guilt. That is what Hamlet, the play is. Thank you very much. Make good use of such classics.